On November 16, 1957, a deputy sheriff walks into his mother's hardware store in Plainfield, Wisconsin. The register is open. There's blood on the floor. He finds her body hanging in a shed behind a nearby farmhouse, skinned, gutted like a deer. Inside the house, furniture made from human bone, skulls turned into bowls. The man who did this was a quiet, unassuming local handyman. His name was Ed Gein. 17 years later, a Texas filmmaker would borrow pieces of this story. Not all of it, not even most of it. He'd mix it with a serial killer's courtroom speech, a department store panic attack, and a fairy tale about children getting eaten. The result became one of the most influential horror films ever made, and it opened with the claim that made it famous, based on a true story. But we'll find that while that's not quite the reality, as is often the case with horror, the truth is stranger than fiction. So, what parts of the movie were fabricated? And what was the horror behind the disturbed mind that made Texas Chainsaw Massacre? His mother died in 1945. Something in Ed Gein shifted after that. He lived alone on a quiet farm outside Plainfield, Wisconsin. The house had 200 acres and almost no visitors. Neighbors knew him as odd, but harmless. A man who did chores for widows and kept to himself. He even babysat for some of them without complaint. Behind that, something else was happening. Gein started digging up graves at night, alone with a shovel and a truck. He targeted recently buried women who resembled his mother. He took bones and skin home with him. In 1954, he shot a tavern owner named Mary Hogan. 3 years later, he killed again. Bernice Warden ran the local hardware store. On November 16, 1957, she sold him a can of antifreeze. It was the last sale she ever made. Her son, a deputy, found the register open and blood on the floor. Police searched Gein's farm that same night. What they found made national headlines for weeks. Furniture upholstered in human skin, bowls carved from skulls, a belt made from human nipples, Warden's body, gutted, hanging in a shed out back. Investigators called him the Butcher of Plainfield. Psychologists later linked it all back to his mother. A house cleared out, except for the part of him that couldn't let her go. This story spread fast, even outside Wisconsin. It reached a small boy in Texas, who was maybe 4 or 5 years old. His relatives told him about a man nearby who dug up graves. They never even said the name. He didn't need it. That boy grew up to direct horror films. His name was Tobe Hooper. And one buried memory was about to resurface in a very different shape. For years, that story sat quietly in Hooper's memory. No name attached to it, just an image, a man, a shovel, a graveyard at night. Then, as a teenager, he heard something else. A doctor he knew once bragged about something from his pre-med days. He'd made a mask out of a human cadaver, just to see if he could. Hooper didn't forget that detail either. 2 stories, years apart, with nothing officially connecting them. But his mind connected them anyway. The grave robber from Wisconsin, the mask made from real skin. Separately, they were just disturbing trivia, the kind people repeat at parties. Together, they started to look like a character. This is how a lot of horror actually gets built. Not from one clean source, but from fragments that refuse to leave you alone. A true crime story doesn't need every detail to be accurate. It just needs one image sharp enough to survive years of forgetting. For Hooper, that image was skin, stretched over something it didn't belong on. He had a face for his monster now. He still didn't have a name for it, or a setting, or a story. What he didn't have yet was a reason to pick up a chainsaw. That part came from somewhere far less gruesome. It came from a Christmas crowd and a very bad day at the mall. It was December 1972. Hooper was Christmas shopping at a Montgomery Ward in Austin. The store was packed, shoulder to shoulder, wall to wall. He hated crowds, genuinely hated them. Standing in the hardware section, he felt the walls close in. He needed an exit, and he needed it fast. That's when he saw the display. A whole rack of chainsaws, lined up like store mannequins. A thought hit him, half joking, half serious. If he started one up, the crowd would part instantly. He could walk straight out, no problem. He didn't do it, obviously. But the idea wouldn't switch off. He drove home with it still running through his head. That night, he put on Elton John's Goodbye Yellow Brick Road. Something about that album fit the mood he was chasing. Light and dark, sitting right next to each other on the same record. He started writing down ideas, and they came fast. A hitchhiker who appears from nowhere, a roadside gas station with something deeply wrong behind it. A family dinner that moves somewhere, no one at the table asked to go. A girl who escapes once, then finds she has to do it all over again. None of it came from research. It came from adrenaline, and a very specific kind of holiday dread. Within 30 seconds, by his own account, the entire plot existed. Now, Hooper had his weapon, and the bones of a plot. What he still needed was something to hold it all together. Hooper and his co-writer, Kim Henkel, needed a shape for the story. They found one in a fairy tale everyone already knew. Hansel and Gretel. Children lured to a remote house. A family inside that wants to do far more than just look at them. Swap the gingerbread cottage for a Texas farmhouse, and the bones underneath show through. Even the candy trail became something darker, a sign luring you toward danger. That gave them their structure. The characters still needed something else, a logic to their madness. Henkel found part of that answer in the news. A Houston area killer named Elmer Wayne Henley was on trial at the time. Henley had helped lure victims for an older man, Dean Coral. Once caught, he said something strange to reporters. He said he'd take his punishment like a man. A killer reaching for old-fashioned morals after everything he'd done. That contradiction stuck with Henkel. It became the blueprint for the film's hitchhiker character. Polite one moment, unhinged the next. A man clinging to manners while everything else about him had rotted. So now the writers had a killer's face, a weapon, and a fairy tale shape. They had a second killer's strange morality, stitched into a side character. Separately, none of this was a movie. It was just a pile of disturbing, unrelated facts. One decision was still left to make, and it had nothing to do with character or plot or violence at all. The film was finished. Gein's shadow was in it. Henley's contradiction was in it. The chainsaw was in it. But Hooper added one more thing, right at the very start. A title card. It claimed the film was a true account of real events. It wasn't. Almost none of it was. So why add a lie to a story already disturbing enough on its own? Hooper had an answer for that too. He'd spent the early 70s watching the news lie to him. The Watergate scandal was unraveling in real time. Gas lines stretched around blocks because of the 1973 oil crisis. The Vietnam War was still grinding on, with no honest ending in sight. Government officials kept insisting everything was fine. It wasn't. Hooper later said he wanted audiences to feel that same unease. A story that announces itself as true, then makes you question everything in it. That feeling, that creeping suspicion that official accounts can't be trusted. That was the whole point. The based on a true story card wasn't decoration. It was Hooper putting his politics directly into the opening frame. And it worked exactly as intended. The film cost around $140,000 to make. It earned more than $30 million at the box office, a 200-to-1 return, built partly on 4 false words, based on a true story. Audiences didn't need it to be true. They just needed to believe, for 90 minutes, that it might be. But a lie that effective doesn't just sell tickets. Sometimes it gets you banned. The film didn't just get attention, it got banned. The United Kingdom blocked it outright for years. For a while, British censors banned the word chainsaw from movie titles entirely. Other countries followed: Australia, France, Norway, Sweden, well over half a dozen more. None of that made the film disappear. If anything, the bans did the opposite. Every ban came with headlines. Every headline came with more curious audiences hunting down a copy. Censorship didn't suppress the film. It advertised it, and underneath all of that noise, the real story stayed exactly where it started. Quiet, mostly forgotten, and far less cinematic than the legend built on top of it. Gein's actual farmhouse never became a museum, or a movie set, or a landmark. It burned to the ground in 1958, days before it was set to be auctioned off. No one ever proved who started that fire. Some neighbors still believe it was deliberate, a town erasing the one thing it didn't want to remember. 50 years later, fans still drive out to Plainfield looking for a house that isn't there anymore. What they find instead is a quiet field and a small-town cemetery. The version of this story that actually got famous was never the true one. It was the one built from 4 mismatched pieces. A Wisconsin farmer who dug up graves and became a face. A department store panic attack that became a weapon. A children's bedtime story that became a structure. And a 4-word lie that became a billion-dollar genre. None of those 4 pieces by itself was strong enough. Put together, they built something that's still playing in theaters. 50 years on.